Well, welcome back. I hope you're well. I I intend today to talk about a topic that I think connects very nicely with what we've talked about in the last few sessions. Today's topic is what are the aspects of a woman's value that men care about. In other words, what matters to men? What do we what do we consider when we're reviewing or analyzing the value of a woman? And in today's session, I will try to tie this into what I call the age categorizations. But to get things started, let me take a step back and try and bring back, for those of you who have seen the prior sessions, this this should be familiar. Let me put it this way so you can all see it. I started one of the earlier sessions by talking about how men value the price that we believe are worth paying for a woman's value. And I began the session by talking about the price and value relationship. And I said in the marketplace, there is a relationship that exists between price and value. Price goes up to meet value, or it comes down to meet value. What separates both is a concept called time. This principle applies irrespective of the type of market. So in the sexual marketplace or in the relationship marketplace, the concepts of price and value and time are consistent with the marketplace of goods and services. And I started by explaining that there is always a rational approach to a man's way of thinking. We think logically, we think rationally. We are cost-benefit calculators. So whenever we are in the marketplace for relationships, whether that be an intimate relationship or a casual relationship, we're always thinking from the perspective of what price do I pay? But most importantly, what value will I receive in exchange for the price? So the concept of cost comes into play, and then the benefit we get for the expense we incur has to be balanced. And usually men, because we always think in terms of getting value for money, we're always looking to pay less in cost to get more in value. For that reason, we are rational thinkers. We're less emotional, and I understand that in the relationship sphere, that doesn't sound necessarily human. The idea that a man will reduce a relationship to a transaction is almost considered to be inhumane. However, it's not necessarily that the interaction between men and women are always transactional. However, what to keep in mind is we think differently. We do not think emotionally. We do not think with our feelings. We think with facts. And because we are naturally logical, we're more structured, we follow a process. It's not unusual to find that a lot of the initial impressions we have of women are done subconsciously, but they are filtered through a prism of rational calculations. Now, men by nature are more interested in things in comparison to women who are more interested in people. Women are more of the social of the two groups. Men are more of the loners of the two groups. And so it's not unusual to find that men will always quantify most issues, especially relational issues, even when it should be more qualitative. Now, with that said, I mentioned in the prior session about the categories of value. And this is just to set a backdrop before we move into today's session, that there are 4 categories, and this is my perspective. Certainly, there are other opinions out there in the market. But if I was sitting across the table with my daughter, I would be saying, baby, this is not all inclusive of how all men think. But if you have this, you should do okay on the average. We care more about the average. And the more men you interact with, the higher the likelihood that these categories will apply. The less men you interact with, the lower the likelihood that it would apply. And the principle of that comes from what we call the law of larger numbers. So we think about averages. We don't think about absolutes. The first category was what I called your EIV. Your EIV is your economic intrinsic value. Again, I'm not going to go into the details, so go back and watch the other videos. Your SMV is your sexual marketplace value. Your NSMV is your non-sexual marketplace value or non-market value. And then what I call your RFV, which is your FV and your RV combined, which is your RFV, is what I call your reproductive fertility value. Now let's bring those four values into today's session. I'm going to put this aside, and if I need to refer back to it, I will. But let's begin today's session. The purpose of this session is so women can just understand how men think. And when I say men, let's recognize the men are we're not a monolith. We don't think all the same. But in the main, we're very similar in how we think. And the more men you have around, the more the likelihood that we all we'll get to the same conclusions, but we may not follow the same logical pathway to get to that conclusion. So think about it like the center of town. There's a saying that truth is like the center of town. There are so many ways and so many roads, so many pathways, so many cycle routes, so many motorways to get to the center of town. However, you don't always have to use one. The most important question is, do you find yourself where you intend to be? And so in today's session, let me share what, the aspects of a woman's value that would matter to a man at the different stages of our relational interaction. Now keep that point in mind. I'm talking about relational interaction. Keep that in mind. But let me provide some additional information, because this will all make sense. Irrespective of who you are, your age, your disposition, your ethnicity, your preferences, whether you're heterosexual or you're non-heterosexual, most people would have to go through what I call a 7-stage process in terms of how we interact with people. For some people, they will experience not all of the 7, some of the 7. For some other people, depending on their lifetime goals, they will experience all of the 7. Now, the first is your introduction. Introduction stage, fairly basic. The second is your conversation and your communication stage. Call this stages. Call this stage of our relational interaction. Keep that in mind. The third is intimacy. This is where we have intimacy plus sex. Now, these are two different things. Intimacy do not mean the same thing to men and women. Women need intimacy. Men need sex. We're built that way. The same way you might have a car needs petrol or diesel, you, the driver who owns the car, you might prefer, sparkling water, but you do not put sparkling water in the car because the car needs petrol to function. Men of a certain age, once we've become sexually active, we need sex, except we decide to be, voluntarily celibate. But we need sex. Women, on the other hand, want sex, but they need intimacy. Certainly, modern women today might disagree with that statement. But if you look through over the last thousands of years, women are more of the nurturing and connected type of the group. Now, number 4 is relationships. Now, forgive me for my handwriting. Take it as it is. I really don't have much appetite for trying to make my writing look good. Number 4 is relationships. Number 5 is commitment. And commitment. Number 6 is dedication. And then number 7 is marriage. Now, you understand that over the course of my conversations, there's something I don't talk too much about, which is, civil partnerships. That does not mean that I'm opposed to such arrangements, but I tend to put all of that into the whole, marriage umbrella. The idea that you're looking to give yourself to someone and to receive someone as a life partner. Call that whatever you may, under a formal or under an informal umbrella. But I just call that marriage. So for all of us, once we get of age, and let's say for people who are of what I call marriageable age, say between 18 and all the way up to say, 65 or more, 70 and more, but give or take in the main. We go through these 7 stages. We get introduced. We begin a conversation process or communication process that develops into some form of intimacy, usually non-sexual first, and then it becomes sometimes physical and sexual. If we spend enough time together, it develops into a relationship. The relationship, if meaningful, if reciprocal, if both parties are interested, it goes into a commitment where I commit to you. We have certain rules, we have certain spoken and unspoken principles that guide our relationship. But in principle, I'm committing to you. But you go from commitment to dedication. Now, commitment and dedication are not the same. They're not synonymous terms. A dedication is a more formalized, ritualistic approach to your interaction with someone. You dedicate yourself to someone, and you do that like a proclamation. You do that publicly, where you say, yes, we are officially dating, boyfriend and girlfriend. Someone is courting you with the intention of marriage. That is dedication, where I've dedicated myself to you. And in principle, I will give my life for you should I need to. I don't have to be married to you. I don't have to receive the marriage certificate for me to say no. My duty to you as a woman is protection and provision. So dedication is where I've dedicated my life. I've dedicated my emotions. I've dedicated my intentions. My spirit is dedicated to your spirit. We're connected. I'm dedicating my future, my goals, my dreams. I'm bringing it under the umbrella of our unionship. And then if things progress, then we can formalize that, where we then become one. And that's through the act of marriage. Like I said, some people jump steps. So this does not apply to every single person. For some people, depending on what they want, and this is an important statement to make. Let me go back to this and just explain something. This is from the prior sessions. Intentions really matter because let me speak from a man's perspective, and the same principle applies from a woman's perspective. A man can come into an interaction for a casual relationship. So looking at this, if he's coming in with a casual perspective, then he might go for introduction, conversation, sex. He wants something casual. The same principle applies with a woman. If he was looking for something more of a long-term relationship, he might go introduction, communication, intimacy, sex, relationship. But he's not committed to you. But if he's looking for a life partner, he might go through these steps. But he might jump. He might get to a relationship, commit to you, and then marriage. But what he does is he combines all three. Now keep that in mind, because the reason for stating that clearly is so you understand that we all experience the various stages differently. Now, the question is, what does this mean? I explained in one of the earlier sessions that there's something called the age categorization. So, if a man is of marriageable age and is looking to get married, especially if a man is of a certain high socioeconomic status, you might say he's a man of value, he's recognized in the marketplace, that he's able to provide, protect, nurture, profess his love to the woman of his choice. But if he's looking for someone he can get married to, we put women into 4 important categories: 18 to 22, 23 to 27, 28 to 32, and 33 to 35. Now, we tend to exclude from 35 and above. Why? Because when you get to 35, you get to what we call geriatric pregnancy, high-risk pregnancy. Anyone who goes and sits with their gynecologist, an obstetrician, will be told that above 35, the quality of a woman's eggs and the quantity of a woman's eggs deteriorates substantially. And the risk to the mother and the risk to the baby increases with time. And so most men, especially men who are looking to start a family, will focus on women who have 18 years, this 18-year window. Now, how does this apply to the stages of a relation interaction? Just bear with me, for example, because this is quite important. And I'm going to tie this back to the categories of value. So you can see what we consider important, depending on what age group you are, but also depending on what stage of the relational interaction that we want and that we find ourselves. It's not all the same. Now, I mentioned in the prior sessions that your EIV, your economic intrinsic value, is the least important value to a man of means. However, for most women, and especially those who have been raised with the feminist, womanist mindset, you may have been raised that you should, go to school, get a job, be independent, and take care of yourself. So you might be thinking, I have a good job, I'm very well educated, I'm making very, very, very good money, and therefore I should be attractive to all men. You might be attractive to some men, but the likelihood that you will be attracted to a man of very high substance and a man of high resources is low, because he doesn't see his responsibility as one that should be shared. From a resource standpoint, he's come into the relationship to provide. He's not looking for help. And I was trying to say in the prior sessions that therefore we discount most men of a certain level. We discount your earnings, your profession, your qualifications, your father's wealth, your net worth. We don't care. We look more towards your sexual marketplace value. And secondly, your RFV, which is your reproductive fertility value. And then number 3, your non-sexual marketplace value. So let me bring these categories into the age categories and then into the relational interactions. Again, I'm going to bring the value distinctions, the value categories, alongside the age categories, and then into the stages of the relational interaction. So you can understand how to appreciate what a man that you're dealing with is looking for. And the whole purpose of all of this is not to give you a blueprint of how you should interact with men, especially if you are a woman. The idea is to help you in your interaction so you're able to make the best decisions and so you can achieve whatever outcome you so desire. Quite frankly, that's your choice. And let me stop and just go take a step back, because you've heard me say, or you may have heard me say, that the feminist movement has caused and continues to cause irreparable damage to most women. I said previously, I believe in the feminist movement. I believe in the pre-1970s, 1960s feminist movement, for the primary reason that it was all about a 5-letter word, or rather 6-letter word: choice. Choice. But one of the reasons I supported the pre-1970s and 60s feminist movement was simply that those who pioneered the movement connected choice to this word: consequence. And so the post-1970s feminist movement removed all of that and simply focused on choice. And they pushed choice to the point where they never stopped and asked the question, what are we trading off? Because there's a mistake that most feminists have. They believe that there are solutions in life. In a finite world with finite resources, which we are, this world has finite resources. And in a finite world, and where we're talking about relationships, which means you don't have infinite men and infinite women, you have wherever you have scarcity, you don't have solutions. What you have is trade-offs. There are no solutions in life. Relationships are about trade-offs. Your choices come with consequences. And so one of the issues I have with the feminist movement today, the modern feminism, is they've sold a lie to most young women. And usually the young women get to realize what the lie was and the consequences and the unintended consequences of such lies about 20 years down the line, when they start to realize that they're not achieving, especially within the aspect of relationship, they're not achieving what they should achieve, especially when they believe that they're very successful and when they believe that their EIV is at the highest, the economic intrinsic value. They find actually that their sexual marketplace value and their fertility value is at the lowest, and that's what men want. And I thought I'd put that there. I'm all for choice, but guess what? Choices, when you're dealing with social interactions with people, are usually critiqued. So choices need to be critiqued in the context of social interactions. As a matter of fact, the community, which is what we are, places certain choices on hold for the greater good of the wider community. So let me make it more practical. You could say, yes, I'm all for choice, but my choice could be such that what I want causes third-party harm. Or my choice could be where I use force, threat, coercion to ensure that someone else behaves in a way to give me what I want. So we have constraints, choice, consequences, and constraints. And part of what I am doing in this session is to actually highlight constraints, to say, yeah, you have all the choices. But when you're dealing between a man, if there's an interaction between a man and a woman, the woman comes with what she wants, which is her preferences and her choices. The man also comes with what he wants, which is his choices, his preferences. And I said in the prior sessions that you have to then go to what we call a trade-off. You don't get what you want in life. You don't get what you deserve in life, because no one deserves anything. You don't get what you ask for in life. You get what you negotiate. You get what you work for. And sometimes, the way the world is set up, you don't always get, even after asking. So you have to make do, and that's where the idea of trade-off comes in. So both parties have to negotiate, and they have to trade off. However, in the early stages of a relationship, if someone is looking for a casual partner, usually a casual partner means that they go through introduction, conversation, intimacy, and sex, or introduction, conversation, communication, sex. The woman has the power. The balance of power is on the woman's side because the woman is the gatekeeper to her body. You've heard my body, my choice. That is 100% correct. The woman is the gatekeeper, and so she has the key. And access to her body comes 100% and should be 100% based on her choices. And what that means is that access to communication, conversation, intimacy, and sex at the early stage of the relationship is the woman's to make. She controls all of that. She is the gatekeeper. She has the key. So the man has to dance, and the man has to abide by the woman's directive. But once you've gone past these introductory stages and you're moving towards a relationship, the balance of power goes from, say, 100%, 90%, and it starts to fall. So when you get to about this, the balance of power drops down to about 60, 50%. All the way up to this, it starts to swing towards the man's position. When it gets to marriage, it becomes 100. So you have this spectrum between 100% down to about 50% here, 50%, 60, 50, and it keeps going. And the further you get closer to marriage, the more it becomes in the man's domain. So the man is the gatekeeper to relationships and sex. But at the early stage of the relationship, it's still, 50-50. Then it starts to swing 60 to the man's favor, and then it starts to climb up to 70 and 80. And by the time you get to marriage, it's the man's decision to make, who he chooses as a spouse. He decides who he gives his last name, if that's something that you are is of your interest. But the point being, ladies, you get chosen, except you're not in a heterosexual relationship, and except you're not marrying a man of means or a man of value. Now, what does this mean? This is a long-winded way of bringing you to the end of my babble, but also to the beginning of today's session, which is the aspects of a woman's value that matters during the relational interaction. What that means is, if you were to look at the categories of value, what that means for a man. Now, this is from a man's perspective. During the introduction stage, all the man really cares about is your sexual market value. Because we're very visual. We care almost 100% about your sexual market value. As we move to the conversation and communication stage, what you then see is an interaction between your sexual market value, which is, let's say this is 100%, because this gets our attention, which we're very visual. Your height, your weight, dress size, your beauty, how you look, how you carry yourself, how sophisticated you are, your natural or level of enhancement you apply to yourself. But that gets the man's attention. When you start to converse, usually most men, if they're looking for casual relationships, they don't really care what comes out of your mouth if what they're looking for is sex. You can be as dumb and dumber, and we don't care, because for us, we're trying to get to the goalpost, which is sex. We're not looking to have intellectual conversations with you if sex is our intention. So we will overlook your non-sexual marketplace value if what we're looking for is casual relationships. But if it's long-term relationships, then during the conversation and communication stage, your sexual marketplace value and your non-sexual marketplace value become paramount. And in terms of a ratio, this could be 80% or 70%, 80% minimum, and this could be 30 to 50%. It does not equate to 100%. We're not combining both. We're saying your attraction is the most important thing, but we like to get along with you. And by your non-sexual marketplace value, we're talking about your femininity, the traditional values you might have, your attitude, your temperament. Do you play? Are you playful? Your personality, your self-image, the way you carry yourself, whether you have that issues. That plays a role because we're looking to converse with you. Maybe go on dates, go on walks, do some outdoor activities. We're looking to spend time with you. Now, once you get to the intimacy and the sex stage, for men, we don't care about your character. We don't care about your degree. We do not care about your sophistication. We don't even care if you're wealthy. If we want to have sex, the question is, do you make our instrument work? And can we look at you for sexual and during sexual encounters or intercourse? So for men, what you find is you come back down to your SMV again. That's what we care about for sex. Now, intimacy is something that women care more about than men. Men, we're more physical. We need sex. We don't want sex. We need sex. Women, you need intimacy, but you want sex. The modern woman would disagree with me and say, no, women need sex. But you're more of the nurturer amongst both species. Now, as we move to number 4, what you find is that we're looking at a relationship now. However, because a relationship is usually boring, and relationships usually are not meant to be exciting, long-term relationships, because you're doing the same thing. You've gone past the whole excitement phase of going out for dates and waking up in the morning. You're starting to see the person for who they are. You find out their breath stinks in the morning. You found out actually when they wake up in the morning, they're not as attractive as they were before you went out for dinner, went to the nightclub, because the makeup is off. You find out perhaps they snore or he snores. You find out actually his breath, Jesus, is just appalling before he has a